The first time I saw her, I thought she was lost. We were standing in the cold dark of a Coronado morning, maybe 4:30, the kind of hour where the ocean sounds louder than it has any right to. 40 of us in a ragged line, all young, all loud in that way scared men get loud to cover the fear. And then there was her, standing at the end of the row with a small green sea bag at her feet, hands folded in front of her like she was waiting for a bus, not signing up for the worst 11 weeks of her life. She didn't look like the rest of us, that's the honest truth. We were boys, really, most of us. 2022 biceps we were proud of, jaws set hard because we'd seen it in movies. She had to be in her mid-30s, lines at the corners of her eyes, short dark hair going a little gray at the temples, and she didn't try to hide it. There was something steady about the way she stood that I couldn't name yet. I'd learn the name for it later. Back then I just thought she looked tired. A kid named Brody, big guy from Texas, leaned over and whispered, "Somebody's mom dropped her off." A few of us laughed. I'm not proud of it now, but I laughed too. Her name, we found out at muster, was Petra Larson. The instructor read it off the roster flat and bored, the way they read everything, and a couple of guys snickered when they heard a woman's name. She didn't react, didn't even blink, just stared straight ahead at a point on the horizon none of us could see. You have to understand what that place was. The grinder they called the main asphalt yard, this big concrete square with the gym off to one side and the sand and the surf right past it. The fog rolled in off the water every morning and sat on everything like wet wool. You could taste salt on your lips before the sun came up. The instructors moved through that fog like sharks, slow and certain, and you learned fast that the worst thing you could do was draw their eye. Petra drew their eye on day one, not because she did anything wrong, because of what she was. A woman in a program that, for most of its history, didn't have a single one. The instructors didn't say anything cruel out loud, not at first. They just watched her a half-second longer than they watched the rest of us, testing, waiting for her to break so they could be done with it. She didn't break. The first evolution that morning was a 4-mile timed run on the soft sand. Anybody who's done it knows the soft sand is a special kind of hell. Your feet sink, your calves scream, and the man next to you is breathing like a dying engine. Brody and a couple of the bigger guys shot off the line fast, all that early energy, all that pride. Petra started slow, steady. Same pace the whole way, this metronome thing she did with her feet, and by mile 3 the big guys were folding and she came past them like a quiet train. Didn't gloat, didn't even look at them, just ran. Brody caught up at the end, red-faced, furious in that way men get when something they assumed turns out wrong. "Beginner's luck," he said, loud enough for everyone. She handed her water bottle to a kid who'd cramped up and walked off to stretch. Didn't say a word. I want to tell you we treated her better after that. We didn't. If anything it got worse because now there was something to prove. The mocking got quieter and meaner. Somebody wrote a word on the whiteboard in the barracks that I won't repeat. Somebody else moved her boots so she'd be late to formation. She found them, said nothing, and was never late. There was a kid in our boat crew, Marcus, the one telling you this, that's me, and I was somewhere in the middle of all of it. Not the cruelest, not brave enough to stop it either. I just watched. And the more I watched her, the more I noticed things that didn't add up. Like the way she packed her gear. Most of us crammed everything in like we were stuffing a suitcase for vacation. She rolled hers. Tight, fast, every item in the same place every time, the kind of muscle memory you don't get from a YouTube video. The way she tied her boots, double-wrapped at the ankle, a knot I'd never seen. The way she ate, fast and without tasting it, eyes always moving around the chow hall like she was counting exits. And there was the way she handled pain. Day 4 was the obstacle course. The O course they call it, this monster of logs and ropes and walls. There's an obstacle near the end called the slide for life, a long rope you go up hand over hand at an angle 30 feet in the air, no net, nothing under you but packed dirt. A guy named Webb froze up there, just locked, couldn't go forward, couldn't go back, started shaking, the instructors were screaming, Webb was crying, and Petra, who'd already finished, climbed back up. Nobody told her to. She got out on that rope next to a panicking 200-pound man and talked him down inch by inch in this low, calm voice, and when his grip slipped she had him with one arm, and I will never forget the sound she made. Not a grunt of strain, a breath, controlled, like she'd done this exact thing before with stakes a lot higher than a training course. When they got down, the lead instructor, a senior chief named Doran, looked at her for a long moment. Petra stood at attention, eyes forward, sweat running off her chin. "Where'd you serve, Larson?" Doran asked, quiet, almost gentle, which from him was terrifying. "Army Senior Chief," she said. "Doing what?" A pause, half a second. "Medical Senior Chief." He stared at her, she stared at the horizon, and then he moved on, but I saw something flicker across his face. He'd heard something in that answer he didn't like or didn't believe. That night in the barracks, Brody was telling everyone how she'd probably been a desk nurse who got bored. How the only reason she made it through the O course was the instructors going easy on her because of who she was. The story got bigger every time he told it. By the time the lights went out, she was a charity case, a political stunt, somebody who didn't belong, and we'd all agreed to it because it was easier than the thing we were each privately afraid of, which was that she was better than us and we couldn't figure out why. I was in the rack below hers. After lights out in the dark, I heard her breathing slow and even already asleep, while half the barracks lay awake terrified of the next day. And I noticed, because the moonlight through the window caught it, the edge of a tattoo on her left forearm. Just the edge, dark ink, some kind of design, partly hidden by the sleeve she always kept rolled down even when the rest of us were stripped to skin in the heat. She always kept that sleeve down. I'd never thought about it before. I fell asleep wondering what it was. I had no idea that a week later that tattoo would stop a decorated SEAL commander dead in the middle of an inspection, in front of all 40 of us. And turn everything we thought we knew about Petra Larson inside out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The thing you have to understand about that first week is how it works on you. They don't break you with one big thing, they break you with 1,000 small ones. The cold water, the sand in every crevice of your body, the screaming, the way they smile when you fail. They wear you down until your judgment goes soft, until you'll believe anything just to have something to be sure of. And the thing most of us got sure of was that Petra Larson didn't belong. We were wrong, we were so completely wrong, and the worst part is that she knew we were wrong and she never once tried to convince us. She just did the work, every day, quiet, steady, carrying something none of us could see under a rolled-down sleeve, waiting. By the second week, the class had thinned out. That's how it goes, guys you'd have bet money on just disappear. The one she saved on the rope rang the bell on day 9. The bell sits by the grinder, brass and bright, and when you can't take it anymore you walk over and ring it 3 times and put your helmet down in a row with the others and you're done. Quit. There were a dozen helmets in that row by the end of week 2. Brody told everyone Petra's would be next. He said it so often it became a kind of prayer for him. But the helmets that showed up in that row were never hers. The instructors had moved on to the boat cruise by then. They split us into teams of 7 and gave each crew a black rubber boat, an IBS that weighs about 170 pounds dry and a lot more wet, and you carry it everywhere. On your head, through the surf, up and over the dunes. The boat becomes your whole world. If one man is weak, the whole crew suffers and the crew makes sure he knows it. Petra was in my crew, Brody too, which was the universe's idea of a joke. We were the slowest crew for 3 days running. Brody decided it was her fault. Said she couldn't pull her weight, that the boat sat crooked because she was on the left side. The instructors made us do it again and again, surf passage in the freezing dark, and every time we failed, Brody found her eyes in the chaos and blamed her with a look. Then came the day everything started to turn. It was a brutal one. Cold front had come through, the water was somewhere in the 50s, and they had us doing what they call surf torture. You lock arms in a line and lie down in the surf zone where the waves break over you and you stay there, just stay. The cold gets into your bones in a way that's hard to describe to someone who hasn't felt it. Your body starts to shut down from the outside in. Your hands go first, then your forearms, then you can't feel your face, and the instructors stand on the dry sand in their jackets and tell you how warm and comfortable they are. A kid named Oliver started going under. He was small, low body fat. The cold was killing him faster than the rest of us. His head dropped. His lips were the color of a bruise. He'd stopped shivering, which anyone with medical training will tell you is the bad sign, the one that means the body's given up trying to keep itself warm. Petra saw it before the instructors did. She broke the line, which you are absolutely not allowed to do, and got an arm under Oliver and hauled him up the beach. The instructors were on her in a second, screaming, but she didn't stop. She put him down on the dry sand and started working on him, fast and cert, checking his airway, his pulse, getting him on his side, stripping his wet top off and getting her own dryish body heat against his back, all of it in maybe 15 seconds, all of it without a wasted motion. Senior Chief Doran stood over her. Larson, get back in the water. He's hypothermic, Senior Chief, core temps dropping. He needs to warm slow or his heart's going to arrhythmia. She didn't look up while she said it. Her hands kept moving. Doran was quiet. The whole beach was quiet except for the surf and Oliver's shallow breathing. And then Doran did something I'd never seen him do. He crouched down next to her and looked at what she was doing, really looked, and then he stood and keyed his radio and called for the medical team, and he did not order her back into the water. That moment cracked something open in the rest of us, not all the way, but a little. Because here's the thing, what she did wasn't textbook student stuff. It wasn't what they teach you in a first aid class. It was the fast, calm, instinctive competence of someone who has done it for real, in places where the medical team is not 30 seconds away, where it's just you and a dying person and the dark. We'd all seen enough by then to know the difference between someone performing knowledge and someone using it. Oliver lived. They pulled him from the program for medical, but he lived, and the corpsman who took him later told one of our guys that another 30 seconds in the water and they'd have been doing something a lot worse than a warming protocol. You'd think that would have ended the mockery. Mostly it did, but not for Brody. Some men can't let go of a story once they've built their whole self around it. He started a new one. Now she wasn't a fraud, she was a show-off, a glory hound. She'd let Oliver suffer just so she could swoop in and play hero in front of the senior chief. It was insane. It was the kind of thing only a frightened person tells himself. But fear is loud and a few guys still listened. I stopped listening that night. I caught up to her at the sinks where we cleaned our gear. My hands were still numb from the surf and I dropped my canteen and she picked it up and handed it back without a word. That was a vascular shutdown you stopped, I said. I'd looked it up. I don't know why I wanted her to know I'd looked it up. Oliver, the corpsman, said another 30 seconds. She looked at me for a moment. First time she'd really looked at me. Her eyes were this pale gray and there was a whole world behind them, a kind of distance, like she was always seeing two places at once, here and somewhere far away. I've seen what cold does to a body, she said. Didn't want to see it again. Where? I asked. Where'd you see it? And the shutters came down, polite but final. Good night, Marcus, she said and walked off to her rack with her left sleeve rolled down over that tattoo I still hadn't gotten a real look at. The thing about her sleeve. By week 2 we were all so torn up, so covered in cuts and sandrash and bruises that the instructors had us in just shorts half the time so they could check we weren't hiding injuries. Everyone's arms were bare, everyone's but hers. She got some kind of waiver or she just did it so consistently nobody pushed it. This one rolled down sleeve over the left forearm. I started watching for it, so did a couple of the other guys. Once the rumor went around that she was hiding something. Brody, of course, decided it was a prison tattoo. Said she'd done time, said that's why she was so cagey. The story practically wrote itself in his head. It wasn't a prison tattoo. Word came down at the end of week 2 that we'd be getting a formal inspection. This was unusual. Inspections happened, but this one had a name attached, and the name made the instructors stand up straighter. A commander was coming. Career special warfare, a man with a reputation, somebody who'd been downrange more times than anyone could count and had the kind of quiet legend around him that made even the instructors careful. He was coming to look at the class, to walk the line. The instructors drilled us for 2 days on how to stand, how to answer, how to not embarrass them. The morning of the inspection, the fog was thick as I'd ever seen it. We stood on the grinder in formation, the whole class, what was left of us, maybe 28 guys and Petra. Doran and the other instructors lined up off to the side, and you could feel the tension in them which made the rest of us tense. The commander came out of the fog like the place had made him out of itself. Tall, lean, gray at the temples too, with a face that had been carved by a lot of sun and a lot of bad days. He didn't say much. He walked the line slow, stopping in front of each man, asking a question or two, moving on. Doran walked just behind him with a clipboard. When he got to me, my mouth went dry and I answered something, I don't even remember what, and he nodded and moved on. He was getting close to the end of the line, close to Petra. And I remember thinking, in that stupid, frightened way, here it comes, now they'll send her home, now the important man will take one look at the woman in the wrong place and that'll be the end of it. I had it exactly backwards. He stopped in front of her, asked her name. She gave it. He asked her prior service and she said Army, medical, the same flat 2 words she'd given Doran. He nodded and started to move on. And then he stopped. Because the morning had warmed just enough and the surf evolution had left us all stripped down, and somewhere in the last hour the constant getting wet and dragging boats had finally pushed her sleeve up. Not all the way, but enough. Enough that as the commander turned, his eye caught the dark ink on the inside of her left forearm. He froze. I mean that literally. The man stopped moving like someone had pulled a plug. He'd been mid-step, mid-turn, and he just stopped, and his eyes were locked on that tattoo, and the color went out of his face the way it goes out of a man's face when he sees a ghost. Nobody moved, the fog drifted. Somewhere a gull cried out over the water. And Commander Hale, this legend, this man the instructors were scared of, reached out very slowly and pushed Petra's sleeve up the rest of the way with 2 fingers, gentle as anything, to see the whole tattoo. And then he looked at her face. And then he said something so quiet that only the front of the formation heard it. It's you, he said. For a second I didn't think I'd heard him right. It's you, the commander said again, and his voice did something I didn't think a voice like his could do. It cracked, just a hair, just enough. Petra stood at attention, eyes forward, but I was close enough to see her jaw tighten. "Sir," she said, "nothing else, just that." The tattoo, I finally saw it whole, and it wasn't a prison tattoo or a tribal design or any of the things the guys had guessed. It was a trident, the Navy SEAL trident, the eagle and the anchor and the pistol, but it was wrapped in something. A circle of names, small, neat lettering all the way around, and under the trident a date, and under the date 2 words in a language I didn't recognize. 5 names. I counted them later when I had the chance. 5. The commander stood there looking at it for a long time. Then he looked at Doran, and Doran looked at his clipboard like the answer might be on it, because clearly even Doran didn't know. "Senior Chief," Commander Hale said, not taking his eyes off Petra, "do you know who this is?" "Recruit Larson, sir, prior Army medical." Doran's voice was careful. "Medical," the commander repeated, and there was something almost like a laugh in it, the kind of laugh that's closer to grief. He turned to the whole formation then, to all of us, and he told us. I'm going to tell it the way he told it, as close as I can remember, because I've gone over it in my head 1,000 times since. There was an operation. He didn't give the year, didn't give the place, just said it was somewhere cold and high in the mountains, somewhere we'd all read about and none of us understood. A team had gone in. His team. Or a team he trained, I was never sure which, and it didn't matter. Something went wrong, the way things go wrong, fast and total, and the team was pinned down through a long freezing night, wounded men, no good way out, whether too bad for the birds to come. There was a medic attached to that mission. Not a SEAL. The teams sometimes worked with specialists, and one of them was an Army combat medic, a woman, one of a handful trained and cleared to go where those teams went into the worst of it because there were places and people only a woman could reach. She was the only medical on the ground when it fell apart. The commander's voice was very level when he told this part, the kind of level that costs something. He said the medic kept 5 men alive through that night. 5 men who by every rule should have died. She moved between them in the dark and the cold with rounds coming in, and she packed wounds and ran lines and breathed for a man whose lungs had quit. And when the cold started taking them, she did the thing she'd done for Oliver on the beach, except she did it 5 times over for hours, with her own hands going numb and her own body shutting down, refusing to stop. When one of the men was hit again and went down outside the perimeter, she went out and got him, dragged him back, took a round doing it in the leg and kept working anyway and didn't tell anyone she was hit until the sun came up and the birds finally got in. 5 men walked off that mountain who shouldn't have, because of her. They put her in for the highest award her branch can give, the commander said. It got bumped down, politics. The mission was the kind nobody admits happened, so the paperwork went into a drawer and the men she saved got told to keep quiet about who saved them. He paused. Most of them got the tattoo anyway. The 5 names are the men who didn't make it on other nights. She carries them. The date is that night. The words underneath, and here he stopped, and I watched him decide whether to say it, and he said it. The words mean, in the language of the people who lived in that valley, the people she also treated. Women and kids, the words mean she stayed. He looked at her. That's what they called you, the one who stayed. The grinder was dead silent. 28 men who'd spent 2 weeks being loud were silent. Brody, 3 spots down from me, was staring at the ground. I lost a brother on a night like that one, the commander said, quieter now, just to her, but we all heard. Different mountain. He didn't have you on it. I've read about what you did. Every man in my community knows that story, even if we're not allowed to know your name. He stepped back and looked at her standing there in her recruit's shorts and her sand and her bruises. This woman we'd called somebody's mom, a charity case, a fraud, a show-off. I have to ask, he said, why are you here? You've already done more than most of us will do in a career. You don't have anything to prove. And Petra Larson, who hadn't said more than 10 words to anyone in 2 weeks, finally spoke. Eyes still forward, voice steady, but I heard the thing under it. I'm not here to prove anything, sir, she said. I made a promise on that mountain to the ones I couldn't save that I'd learn to be there sooner, be there better. The teams go to the worst places on earth, and sometimes the only one who can reach the people who need help is someone like me. I want to be the one who reaches them. I want to be on the team, not attached to it. She took a breath. I'm too old and I know it. I'll probably fail. But I'd rather fail trying to keep that promise than spend the rest of my life knowing I didn't. Nobody said anything. What was there to say? The commander looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something I'll remember for the rest of my life. He came to attention, this commander, this legend, and he saluted her. A recruit. It broke every rule of how that place worked, rank and order and who salutes who, and not one instructor moved to stop it because some things are bigger than the rules. Petra returned it, crisp, her hand didn't shake. Carry on, Recruit Larson, he said, and he walked back into the fog the way he'd come, and the inspection was over. I'd like to tell you Petra Larson made it through and got her trident. The truth is more complicated and I think she'd want me to tell it straight. She got hurt in Hell Week, the old leg wound, the one from the mountain, gave out on her during the around the clock and she went down hard on the rocks and that was the end of that class for her. Medical rollback. She'd have to start over from week 1 if she wanted to keep going. She wanted to keep going. I don't know if she ever finished. We got separated after that, the way the program scatters you, and I went on to my own class and my own long road, and I lost track of her the way you lose track of people who pass through your life like weather. But I think about her every time it gets hard, every time I want to quit, every time I catch myself looking at someone and deciding I already know who they are. Because here's what she taught me without ever trying to teach me anything. You don't know who's standing next to you in the dark, you don't know what they've carried, what they've survived, what they've given. The quietest person in the room, the one you wrote off, the one you laughed at on the first cold morning, might be the one who'd go back out into the fire for you. Might already have for somebody else on a mountain you'll never see, on a night the world agreed to forget. We called her somebody's mom, we called her a charity case. We mocked her until a man we were all afraid of stopped cold at the sight of her arm and saluted her like she was the most important person on that field. Because she was. I still don't know everything about Petra Larson. But I know the answer to the question we kept whispering that first week, the one Brody asked the loudest, the one we thought we already knew. Who is she? She's the one who stayed. And the rest of us are still trying to be worth standing next to her.